freedom is not free. Discover what it takes. It's time to tap and move forward.
Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Tap and Move Forward. I'm your host, Lynn Shelley. Today's guest built a business while he was in the active duty Marine Corps, and now he has a multifaceted career as a productivity expert and owning and operating a marketing company and a dance and martial arts studio. After recording this episode, I went home and organized my makeup just so I could streamline my morning routine. I hope you also find something to help you become more efficient and productive with your day. Without further delay, here's the interview with Joseph Cancilla. So Joseph, why did you join the military and how old were you?
So when I joined, I was about 20. So I think I turned 21 shortly after boot camp. So on my reasoning why, honestly, at first I wanted to get out of Utah and where I was living and experience different cultures and experience something outside myself and outside of what I had grown up used to. And then I also had the curiosity for a long time about the military. It seemed like a big black hole. It was the unknown for me. And I had no idea what I was getting involved with. I never had any family that was military. And so I had actually requested a job in the military with something that I was already familiar with. So at least I had something to hold on to that wasn't unknown. And I wanted to serve. At first I wasn't sure why I wanted to serve. It just felt like that's what everybody should have at some point, have some type of military experience in their life.
You felt that before you joined?
Yeah, and now and looking back on it, now I definitely think that everybody should have some type of military experience and give a little bit of themselves.
It was just confirmed to you after joining.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you pick the Marines?
Because they're the biggest, baddest. I heard that boot camp was the hardest. It felt like if I was going to challenge myself, I wanted to go all the way. And it was a very big challenge. And I don't know, it's always probably that pride, that Marine Corps pride that you'd hear Marines saying. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I had to call myself a soldier or an airman or a seaman. I'm a Marine, and I became a Marine for a reason, and it's part of who I am still today. I don't talk about it as much. It's not something that's part of my daily conversation or even in the forefront of my mind, my time in the military, but it's always held really close to home. Every time I pass a flag, I get choked up a little bit, and there's a lot of that pride that goes into what I've done and who I am and what I accomplished in the military and now outside the military.
So did it almost feel just inherently correct or right in alignment for you to go into the Marines?
Yeah.
None of the other branches were really even an option
to
you?
And I looked into it. I looked into other branches. I talked to recruiters from other branches, and none of it seemed like it fit. And I've even had people tell me, oh, well, if you would have gone Air Force, you would have been very well taken care of, or it wouldn't have been so hard if you went Navy. And I've never really taken the easy way out for anything. And if I was going to push myself with anything, it was going to be Marine Corps boot camp. It was going to be becoming a Marine. And that's, I think, why I chose the Marine Corps.
What was your biggest surprise coming into the military? Or in boot camp?
I think I was pretty shell-shocked when I first got there. The constant yelling and not being able to do anything right.
Right.
And it was more of the head games than anything, because physically I knew I was fine. I had a little bit of asthma that I failed to disclose to my recruiter
Uh-oh.
intentionally.
Yeah.
But that actually, it was exercise-induced asthma, and by the time I got out of boot camp, they beat it out of me. It was completely gone, and still, I don't have asthma at all to this day. No matter how hard I train, no matter how hard I work out, it's gone. So that's one thing that I'm kind of glad that I failed to mention. And it was only an issue my first couple of weeks while I was getting used to the level of fitness. And it was usually only our longest runs that would really kick my butt. But then, and then even our 3 mile runs that we did for our physical fitness tests, at first I couldn't even finish 3 miles. I would get to 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and I was just dead. And then by the end of my boot camp experience, I could run 3 miles no problem, and my times were getting better and better. 21 minutes, 20 minutes, 19 minutes. I think my best ever 3 mile ended up being 18 minutes and 50 seconds.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty good for 3 miles. Can't say that I can still do that today. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I loved the physical aspect of it. And once I realized it was really just a game of mental discipline and mental hardness is what we were developing in there. And the discipline to be able to know that I can handle anything that I set my mind to. There were a lot of parts in my life that I had some uncertainty about. And when I went through boot camp is when I realized that it was just my lack of discipline and willingness to get in, roll my sleeves up, and get it done that I had been experiencing before the military. And now during and now after the military, I think I definitely have the reputation of being willing to get in there with the team, get into the thick of it, roll my sleeves up, get dirty, and do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Is that something you feel the military trained you into? Or was that already part of your character beforehand?
I was a hard worker before, but I think I would get to a certain point, depending on what it was, and I would just stop, or I would slow down and not really give it 100% all the way through to the finish line with different things. And with the military being pushed way beyond my limits, now I know that pain is temporary and discomfort is temporary. And if you can just get through it, the reward on the other side is so much more worth it than stopping early or stopping before your mark.
What advice would you give someone who's getting ready to go to boot camp?
I would say train hard physically. You want to be able to at least meet the minimum requirements, but don't go into anything with just the minimum. Do everything that you can to blow past whatever those minimum requirements are. And then you'll have a much easier time physically, and that will be less of a challenge for you. Mentally, before boot camp, I was kind of obsessed. I've always had that type of personality where if it's something new for me, I get obsessed with it. And so all the information and knowledge and everything that I could go into boot camp with, I already knew most of it. My general orders and Marine Corps history and every bit of information that I thought would be required of me, even though I had no idea.
You studied that before you went to
I studied it before I went in.
Nobody helped you with that or told you what to study. You just naturally chose into that?
Yeah, I figured general orders would be pretty important to know. Different pieces of history would be really important to know. All the ranks.
Right.
Thought I'd better know the ranks before I went into boot camp, even though that's what you're going to learn in boot camp.
Right.
I already knew kind of what was going on, and because of that, my drill instructors could see that. I was the platoon leader through most of my boot camp experience. I think they called me the PRAC recruit, and the PRAC was the practical information or practical knowledge that every recruit needed to know before they got out of boot camp. So I was the overly motivated one that they had me constantly shouting and repeating to the platoon. If we're waiting in line, if we're whatever it was that we were doing and we had time to kill, they'd always yell for the PRAC recruit to start drilling them. And most of the time I wasn't even reading anything when I was drilling the rest of the platoon on the knowledge that they're supposed to know. So I think I got a lot of recognition for that while I was in boot camp. And I think it made the drill instructors lean on me even more. And being able to finish top of my class really wasn't that hard. Because I was already there physically, I was already there mentally, I was already there as far as the instant willingness, obedience to orders. It wasn't hard. You do what you're told, you get it done quickly, you do it exactly like you say it, you don't overthink it and make it more complicated than it needs to be. You just do it. And then attention to detail. That's another thing that I would probably say before boot camp. I was already pretty OCD, and attention to detail is always something that was a big thing for me. Even before boot camp, my even dress shirts and stuff like that in my closet. It's not like they'd be perfectly pressed and all of that, but they would be perfectly hung up and color coordinated and 2 fingers between each hanger. And
wow.
And that just got worse during and after boot camp, and the perfectionism that I had just intensified a lot. So then when it was after boot camp and we were in the fleet, we'd have room inspections or whatever it ended up being. I was never worried about it because I made sure my stuff was always perfect all the time because that's how I wanted it. I didn't have to hurry and clean things up because an inspection was coming through. I just got more detail oriented with the way that I ironed my clothes and took care of my uniforms, and even my civilian attire. It was always, it kind of went to the next level when I was in the military.
So would you recommend to somebody that they take some time to work on that before joining?
Yeah, I definitely would. Like just check in with yourself and your attire and your living space, your environment. Just take a look. Do you feel like it's structured, or is it kind of chaotic? Is it kind of a mess? Is your room a mess? Is your workstation a mess? Is whatever it is around you, is it generally clean or is it generally messy? And if it's generally messy, you're going to have a very hard time in boot camp, and then after that, they'll beat it out of you. That's for sure. If you have any type of imperfections with the way that you live. And still, after boot camp, it doesn't mean you're fixed. It doesn't mean that you're permanently that way. It's good to take that away from boot camp and to ingrain that in your life. But you'll still see plenty of military members around you that just say whatever and kind of go back to the way things were. And they're the ones that struggle the most through their military experience.
Do you still carry attention to detail in your closet, or have you found other aspects for it?
Yes, I do. And my room and my bed and my closet, even though that I'm married now, I don't have total control over my living space. My wife is definitely used to it and how I am. It's generally only mess from the kids that we have in our house. You'll never see my stuff laying anywhere because it always goes right back to where I want it to be. It's almost systemizing things. And now in business, I systemize everything. So if I can't function in my own room or my own living space or my own car without having to look for something and just knowing where everything is without having to see, that's the way that I like to have things. There's a lot of people that I know, they can't ever find their car keys. They can't ever find that shirt or those pants or their backpack or their laptop. They just misplace things because they don't have a place for everything. They haven't systemized their life enough to have that kind of structure. And I think that's all by accident now. It's not really even intentional.
Right.
It's just my default mode. Yeah, it's helpful.
How did you deal with failure in your career?
Most of the time I took it with a grain of salt. I don't know how many times I really saw too much failure, because most of the time that I was told that I was failing, I already knew I did whatever it was that they asked me to do perfectly, and that they were just getting after me for no reason. I would try to pay attention. I would try to take pieces where I could learn and improve, but a lot of times it's just, in a way, being picked on. And they might do it out of tough love. They might do it because they want to be developing you to try even harder. But I think a lot of the failure that I ran into while I was in the military was my outside of the military focus. I had staff sergeants, gunnery sergeants that were really, really upset with me that I was building business outside of the military. And I think in the Marine Corps is probably the hardest environment that I could have chose for the goals that I had. And that I just had to remember who I was, and really stand up for myself, even to a higher rank that could have made my life horrible. I really had to remember what it was that I wanted and what my goals were outside of the military. And that's actually one of the things that my recruiter recommended to me before I went to boot camp. He said, don't forget who you are. And all the goals that I had before going into boot camp, he said it's absolutely possible to accomplish that while you're in the military. Just don't forget what those are. Write them down. Remember who you are, which sounds cliche. Like our moms and dads always say, remember who you are. But that's the advice that really stood out from my recruiter, that I remembered. And I think a lot of Marines coming out of boot camp, they get so tunnel vision focused and almost brainwashing into that Marine Corps culture, that Marine Corps lifestyle, which is good. And that's what it takes to be disciplined in a wartime environment, or in a team environment where other people are counting on you, where their lives are counting on you, to be able to have that type of discipline. So it's good, but completely losing yourself is not good. And you can still have identity when you're in the military. But for me, my shortcomings in the military were because I was an entrepreneur. I was way different than anybody around me. I would show up to work I used to have this ugly black portfolio that just had writing paper in it because I was constantly detailed with notes and writing things down. And for the military and outside the military, I had different sections of how I would use a piece of paper, and it's kind of funny now that I think about it, because I don't use paper at all anymore. And then alongside my portfolio that I had, this little black leather portfolio that I carried on everywhere, I always had a book with me everywhere that I went. I would show up to work, I'd have a book. If we had downtime, even 10, 15 minutes of downtime, which the biggest motto in the military is hurry up and wait, right?
Yes.
So if I were going to do something, I wanted to be working on myself and developing myself in the direction that I wanted to develop. Yeah, there's a lot of, what do they call them? It's been so long. Oh, MCIs, Marine Corps Institute. And it was the Marine Corps learning that we needed to do to progress through the ranks.
Right.
After I picked up rank, I always had all of that completed for my next rank. So I really never had any of that stuff that I needed to do, because I was always 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps ahead in that area. So I was able to create a reading track for myself.
It sounds to me like you had an incredible sense of your environment and just knowing what was required at any given moment.
Yeah. It's not hard if you know where you're going, which is what? If you're a private first class, you're working to pick up lance corporal. If you're lance corporal, you're working to pick up corporal. If you're corporal, you're looking to pick up sergeant. You always know where you're going, And that's the hardest part for most people in life, is that they don't really know where they're going. They don't have a clear path. So how in the world are they able to plan backwards and build it out and accomplish what they need to get from point A to point B?
However, in the military, it's fairly obvious.
It's already set.
Yeah.
You want to know what to do, there's a list, and you just knock it out one at a time.
You're going to the next rank.
Yep. And then all you have to do is wait for time and rank.
Right.
And if everything else is done, it's just a waiting game. So that was always important to me, to stay one step ahead. I didn't ever want to be corrected by my superiors for no reason. And if I could give them the least amount of reasons that they could correct me or get after me about anything, then that's where I wanted to be.
Was that naturally your motivation that came in with you?
Just to not be corrected?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've always been that type.
Growing up or in high school?
Yeah, I don't know if it's being adverse to authority, but I've always kind of kicked back against the norm. Even in high school, I probably did push a little bit against teachers or authority in school, because I was very, I guess, cerebral. I'm constantly thinking through things and analyzing different things. Mm-hmm. I've always kind of been a head case that way. And then even in the military, I could see that what was being asked of me was not the best way to do things. And it drove me absolutely crazy. But I still had to say yes and do it, right?
Yes. So how did you deal with that?
Most of the time, I would just do it their way. Or I'll actually maybe 60% of the time, which is a little more than half, I'd say, yes, sir, whatever. Yes, corporal, yes, sergeant. Just so it would appease them. And then I'd get it done my own way faster. Which they hardly ever knew about. They just knew that it was done, which is all that they should ever care about anyways, is that we get to the end result, not necessarily how we got there. And if there's any times where it really was important, the way that we got to that end result, I would definitely pay attention to that. And I was always sensitive to making sure that I wasn't insubordinate, that I was listening. My superiors never really had a hard time with me unless it was what I was doing in my off time, or as I would call it, my not so free time. Because I could be working from...
Not so free time.
It's my not so free time. Yeah, I could be working from 3:30 or 4 in the morning until 6 or 7 p.m. And then what would most Marines do after they got off work? They'd be drinking and partying and being stupid or playing video games. Like, that's kind of the environment that I lived around, mm-hmm. or that was around me, and that just wasn't me. And so during work, I would be reading. After work, I took less time to read and develop myself, but I was building my company while I was in the military. So even though I worked that crazy full day, I still would work maybe from 6 or 7 p.m. until 11 midnight, get 3 hours of sleep, get up and do it all over the next morning, get my exercise in for the morning, which was mandatory, right? And get my work done. And I'd get my work done as fast as I possibly could so I could get to me.
It sounds like it was really important to you to be effective with anything that would be considered wait or downtime.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's very true. And I think that I still am that way a lot. It drives me crazy when I'm killing time.
Yeah.
I don't feel productive. And another cliche out there is that an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Right.
And the easiest way for anyone to get complacent or to get into trouble is to have too much time on their hands and be idle. So if I can be productive and intentional with how I was spending my time, then I knew that I could accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And I did. While I was in the military, my outside of the military income ended up passing up what the military was paying me. So that was one of my goals. And for me, it was easy for me to transition out of the military. I think military members get stuck and they get comfortable and they get afraid of what civilian life is going to be like. So they re-enlist because they're kind of cornered into this little spot where they know what to expect if they re-enlist.
Right. So when they do it just because it feels like the only option that they have.
Yep, which is not a good reason to re-enlist.
Absolutely. I agree. 100%. So with all the reading that you've done over the years, do you have any particular book or books that have been really influential to you in your life or your career?
Probably the most influential book that really started to shape who I am was from before the military. It was Cash Flow Quadrant by, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and the second book is Cash Flow Quadrant. I read both of those, and it completely changed how I see income. And I learned about the 4 different types of income that anybody can earn, and there is no other way. So those were very influential for me. And another book that I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And a lot of those were recommendations from business mentors that I had before the military. But it's really shaped me and my life and anything that I've really ever needed to do, because I can interact with people differently. When I was in the military and I was still studying business, I was learning about personality types and ways, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's ways that people learn. And that really helped me when I became an NCO, a non-commissioned officer. And I had people that I had to take care of. And I had people that were reporting to me, and they had all kinds of personality differences. And knowing their personality type, knowing my own personality type, and how to interact with that specific personality, it really has gone a long way for me before, during, and after the military. And it's invaluable, that type of information. So every book that I would read, I'm not saying that I used to take fantasy books into work with me and I was reading stories and filling my head with stuff that really doesn't matter. Every book that I ever carried with me was a personal development book, whether it was usually it was about business, or anything that would help complement relationships, even sales, products, and all that kind of stuff. I would soak up all of it that I possibly could.
Is it still that way? I see that you have books on your desk right now.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes I don't have as much time to be able to read as much as I would like. But it's still really important to me. Before the military, I really tried hard to read at least 1 book a month, which is, I think, a very big accomplishment for most people. If you can consider 12 books a year, and if you were going to college, how many books would you be reading a year if you're going to college?
Quite a few.
A few, yeah, but I don't even think up to 12.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been almost a self-education or a self-degree in a way.
Right.
I have a lot more knowledge and a lot more experience than most people going through college, even back when I was that young. I don't even know how many books are on that bookshelf right now, but I've read 98% of them. There's a couple here and a couple on that other bookshelf that I haven't read yet, but definitely on my list, and it's definitely something that is going to help me and my progression with the next step that I want to be in my life and my business. And it hasn't always been business books. I've read books on marriage, I've read books on parenting, I've read books on all kinds of things, and not everything you read in a book is something that you want to take away from it forever.
I think that's an important point.
Yeah. And books aren't life. Like, it's not this holy Bible that is going to really change the way that you are living your life. And it's not even like the self-help type of books that people kind of get zoned into. They'll read a book and they expect a change. There's no change. Then what? And so it's really a matter of digesting what you want from that book and putting it into practice. But then after a while, if you make a habit out of that type of reading, it becomes subconscious. And I've noticed a lot of habits in my life that just hit me out of nowhere or surprised me. Like, why would I react like that in that type of situation? I think I remember reading something like that. And it might be a little fuzzy to me, but the way that you can really shape your mindset and what it is that it's not really how you want to be, it's more of who you want to be. And one of the things that I noticed in the military, in boot camp, and even now after, are that there's different ways of being. And I'm trying to remember, most people want to have something in order to have, and then I'm not remembering it right now. They want to have something so they can be someone.
Right, exactly.
So you've heard that before, but
Yes.
the best way for it to be laid out is be, do, and then have.
Right.
So be that person, do the actions that it takes, and then have what it is that you want to have.
It'll naturally come to you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the right order was have, do, be. And it's completely backwards.
That's what people think it should be.
Yes. So
That's one of the stories that you say inside of your head. Like, if I could just have this, then
have all this stuff. Or if I just do this, then it's going to make this world of difference.
Right.
But really, it doesn't matter. If you can really hone in on who you want to be, that always comes first. And when you're really, truly living as who you are intentionally, then naturally you're doing the actions that it's going to take for you to accomplish your goals and have what it is that you're looking for. So it's stuff like that reading books and setting your mind right, that really helps. And what I have noticed is that the times in my life where I've slipped away from reading and I've stopped reading are the times in my life where I've made the least amount of money. And the times in my life that I'm religious with reading that book a month, at the very least, reading that book a month is where I've made the most money in my life. And being in a situation where I don't have a set income, that's very important to me. So I know that reading, and not even just reading, it could be audios, it could be podcasts, it could be anything that is going to edify your mind,
right,
and enhance who you are. Like, it directly impacts your life, whether it's monetarily, mentally, spiritually, physically. If you're not constantly improving, our lives are always in a state of atrophy. You're going to be taking steps backwards if you're not intentionally taking steps forward.
Who was most influential to you during your career and why?
Definitely Sergeant Winter, who's not a sergeant anymore. He was my recruiter, and I lost touch with him, unfortunately. I ran into him accidentally a few years ago, which was amazing. It was really cool to run into him. And I was even, like, I live in Utah. I went to Texas, and we were randomly at this theme park in Texas with the family. And I ran into Gunnery Sergeant Tello. And he was hanging out by this tree, and I was hanging out by this tree, I think waiting for the rest of the family to catch up with me. And I turn around, I almost run into him. And I was stationed with him in Okinawa, Japan. And I was shocked. He was shocked. He's like, "What in the world are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, amusement park. What are you doing here?" But it was really cool to even for 10 minutes catch up with him, because he was very influential in my time out there, because I think that's the time of my military career that I struggled the most, is when I was stationed out there. And he was one of the ones I was constantly in his office, and he really took me under his arm to be able to help me process what I was going through and to be able to get past a lot of the difficult things that I was up against out there. And there's one more, and I'm having a really hard time remembering his name right now. It was one of my officers out in, was it Pendleton? No, it was 29 Palms. I just remember training exercises that we did at Camp Pendleton, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name right now. But he was a really solid support for me, and whenever I needed somebody to talk to, even if it was something that I was confused about or feedback about a certain scenario or situation that I was in, and how to handle it better. I was constantly picking his brain, constantly getting feedback from him, and he was very blunt about his feedback. But I can appreciate that now, and he meant a lot to me. I have photos with him of him somewhere, and I definitely have his name. I need to dig through that and probably reach out to him and reconnect with him in some way, just because he made a big difference to me. So it's kind of like those, I guess, father figures or mentor figures while you're going through, not just like one thing that I think I've said before a lot is that when I was in the military, I had very good examples of what not to be or what not to do. And then I had those very few good examples of who I should pattern my military life, my military experience after. And it was a very big black and white difference. Before I picked up sergeant, which was probably one of my biggest accomplishments in the military, I was able to pick up sergeant within 4 years. And I don't think a lot of people are able to do that. And even before I became a sergeant or a corporal, I was able to see how I didn't want to act when I was a sergeant. And so I was definitely kind of a hothead when I was a corporal. And then there was a very big difference when I became a sergeant, and I became a lot quieter. I could definitely light somebody up if I needed to. But I was more observant, and I was more quiet. I was more communicative, and probably more like that father that was more displeased or disappointed in somebody that was working for me than just this angry, crazy, screaming fireball all the time. And I think that was very effective, and it was a better way to act or behave when I did pick up rank and I did take a leadership position.
I think you've mentioned to me before that you would go out of your way to hold people to the standards that you felt, or that the military standard. You'd go out of your way to hold people to the military standard.
Yeah, and accountability is very important in all areas of life. In business, accountability is important, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But even when I was in the military, and that's why I say I struggled with my time in Okinawa, is because I was a junior rank, but for me, I could care less. Accountability is accountability, up the chain or down the chain. Was I always tactful with the way I would hold higher ranks accountable? No, probably not. And I never hesitated to deliver feedback that was needed in order for somebody to really see what it was that they're doing and how they could do it different. And it was even times where even higher ranking superiors that I had brought me into their office, and they were asking feedback on the people that I was working for directly. And the hard time that I was having is when I would give very clear feedback about what was okay and what was not okay. And then I'd get a lot of backlash afterwards. After they got corrected, it would definitely come back to haunt me or to bite me in the butt again after that, just because they don't like it. If they don't have enough humility to be able to receive feedback or to be held accountable, then it makes things very difficult. I felt like I would take feedback very well, or at times take it with a grain of salt. And it always depends on who it's coming from and what it's about, in my opinion. And then I've carried that into my time after the military, and the type of accountability that happens after the military. Like there's business deals, there's employee-employer arrangements, there's certain expectations that are made, and if those are broken, I do not hesitate to hold somebody accountable, because if I look the other way, it will keep happening. If I decide not to say something that's improvement for them, that I am robbing them of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I would even say that with that accountability, it just has to be automatic. Like if something happens, instantly get it handled. Sometimes there's sticky situations or there's personality conflicts.
Right.
Maybe even not with me, maybe it's with the team, and it has to be handled. And so a big thing for me that I've learned, I don't even know how long ago, is to always take it to the source. If there's an issue with
Yes.
somebody, why would you talk to anybody else about it? You need to go directly to them
Yes.
and get it handled as
Right.
quickly as possible. I've even had situations come up in the last couple weeks where it wasn't even 10 minutes. I had that person on the phone. I said, hey, this is kind of what is going on. I want to make sure that we handle this as quickly and as efficiently as we can. What are the issues? This is what is happening or coming up with me. What's going on with you? Where can we come to this middle ground? Where do we go from here?
Right.
All of that is very important for me to tackle quickly. I think I surprise people a lot of the times because the difficult things to talk about are the things that I have no problem bringing up immediately.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I think because of the military, I don't really have a censor anymore. And that was probably one of my adjusting points with my transition out of the military. Is that
because most people have filters.
Yeah, most people have filters. I don't. And I would expect civilians to have the same level of discipline as people did around me in the military. Or I don't think it's too much to expect that if somebody makes a commitment to me, that they're going to keep it.
Right.
Or at least ahead of time, renegotiate, figure out why they can't, for some reason, do what they said they were going to do, and reschedule an appointment or push back a deadline or whatever. As long as the communication is there and everyone's on the same page, then it's not a broken commitment. But don't be afraid to address it because that's when it gets worse.
Right. Absolutely. What behavior or skill from the military has most impacted your life?
Probably physical fitness. That's above and beyond anything else. One of the biggest things that I took out of the military, and still like my daily morning regime. I have to get a workout in the morning, or I don't really feel like I have a productive day. I feel like I always get a lot more done with my day if I take a good hour and a half and work out in the morning. It gets my blood pumping, it gets that blood moving to the brain, it gets me thinking quicker, I guess is a good way to put it. I think early on when I was in the military, I realized that that's why physical fitness is mandatory. And if it's not, there's something wrong with that unit. But before work, every day, we were working out, whether it was a short run, other types of exercise that everybody complained about. Nobody wanted to wake up earlier to work out,
Right.
but it was mandatory. And the
Right.
reason for it that finally clicked in my head is that they got more productivity out of us if they required us to work out first. And so in a way, they're getting more bang for their buck, requiring us to work out before we actually go to work. And I think I realized that I think there was a time that I got injured or I got sick or something when I was in the military. And that time that I wasn't able to work out, I was sluggish, I was slow, I couldn't get nearly as much done at work as I could when I had my regular exercise. And so now my life every single day, my workouts are not optional. I consider working out as part of my work day.
Right.
Just because it's mandatory. And my workouts have shifted quite a bit. It's not the normal go to the gym and lift weights or go run or swim or whatever. I do a lot of acrobatic training with the performing that we do. I'm an instructor for acro yoga, and it's fun. It's a different way to work out, and I noticed that even my core workouts really went to the next level when I started training with a partner and doing partner acrobatic work, because it uses all of me. And it's fun and it's light and it's entertaining, but it's just as much a workout as if I were to go to the gym and lift for hours or run for 30 minutes or swim. But I do notice that if I don't get that in, I do everything I can not to schedule appointments before 8 a.m., 9 a.m. just so I know that I'm going to be able to get my time from 6 a.m. in the morning to 8 a.m. And even when I had an earlier work schedule, it's been a 5 a.m. morning, and I get done right around 7. I'm showering at the gym. I get to my office by 7:30 or so, or 7:45. And for me, a big reason for that was I needed to wake up before the rest of the world and get enough done for myself and physically before the rest of the world. Or I'd have my phone blowing up the entire time that I'm in the gym, which is not very pleasant. And I don't really get a good workout if I'm constantly having to answer the phone.
Right. So have you had mornings where you wake up and you don't really want to work out?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I just do it. If I can get enough sleep the night before, even if it's only 5 or 6 hours, I don't even know what most people sleep, 7 or 8. I don't know. That's more sleep than I think is necessary. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But yeah, it's being able to recharge and recover is important. And if I have a really late night for any reason, if I'm getting to bed at 11 or midnight or 1 in the morning, it's definitely hard for me to wake up at 5:30 or 6 the next day. So I try to keep a pretty set schedule. There's no reason I need to be up that late. And I've always been an early riser. Actually, I don't know that I was an early riser before the military, but I definitely am now. I noticed that my wife is a nighttime person and I'm an early morning person. Mm-hmm. And for me, when that alarm goes off, or sometimes it's my alarm set for 6 and my eyes are already open at 5:45 and I beat my alarm. And it's kind of a self-programming that I've been able to work myself into. But I'd much rather wake up in the morning and work out. I have a lot more energy and then I'm ready to tackle my day. And so I get excited. Usually if I've got a pretty full day, I'm bouncing out of bed because I'm looking forward to that day. I'm looking forward to the clients that I have and the people that I'm helping. And it's rewarding for me. So what part of me would want to be sluggish getting out of bed? There isn't any part of me that would want to stay in bed. I don't enjoy my bed as much as most people. It's the least productive part of my 24 hours. So anything that I can do to make sure I'm ready. Plus, usually I get to the kitchen and I got some pre-workout or something that will pick me up immediately on my way to the gym, and a small snack, whether that's an apple or something, I don't know, something light, and then I'm ready to go. So nutrition and regular eating is something that I haven't always been the best with. Especially because I get so tunnel vision focused on projects that I'm working on. I could get to the office at 8 in the morning, jump right into my work, not even have breakfast, and then realize it's 9 p.m. at night and I still haven't ate anything. And why in the world am I getting ornery and testy with people?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So I used to have to schedule eating reminders in my calendar. So I would take care of myself like I should and make sure that because if I go down, my whole world goes down. Everybody that's counting on me goes down.
Right.
So
it sounds like you like to program your day or find ways to program your life or your day so it's just naturally structured to work for you.
Yeah. I would say that routine is really important to me, and systems. And if you can build your day in a way that you don't have to think about it, then you can really focus on the things that are the most important to think about. What I do for work takes a lot of brain energy and creativity. I'm in the marketing world. And so the more brain power that I can put toward creative projects for clients, the better. And using brain power on scheduling, or what am I going to do for my day, or what's the first thing that I'm going to do when I get to, that's all BS, and it's all really a big waste of time. And so really productivity hacks are something that I've been passionate about for a long time. I haven't released it yet, but there's a program that I want to release called the Master Productivity Formula. And all of the weird ways that I stay organized digitally or in person, or how I structure my days, how I color code everything, I think will be really beneficial for executives or business owners or even other people that just want to be more productive with their day.
Can you give the listeners a sample?
A sample? Yeah. I would say, so I've got this weird structure because I work on the computer a lot. I have this weird structure with how I keep icons on my desktop. So every section of my life has a folder, and then the column directly underneath that folder has to do with that section of my life. So my personal folder, that's all personal. It's family. It's that kind of stuff. And if I need to find anything that has to do with that, that's where I go. And my next one over would be ideation, my marketing company, and immediate clients that need attention. It all goes there. And this is all on the left side of my screen. When I was going through school had its own column. If you're going to church or anything like that, that could have its own column. The dance studio that we have, it has its own column in the way that I organize things. And it's more of a mid-term storage. Everything on the right side of my desktop is always clean, except while I'm working. So documents that I'm working on and different things that I have to get done that day are all constantly changing, coming and going, being deleted, being moved around, being emailed somewhere. That's all like my workstation, my work environment on the right side. And by the end of my workday, that has to be clean and completely gone. Either if it's something that I'm not done with, it needs to go in that midterm storage so it can be pulled back again the next day. And then each of those folders also have their own color. My whole personal life is blue. And so if it's on a folder, it's blue. If it's inside of my calendar, any personal stuff or my personal appointments are all blue. And then if it's ideation or any work related, it's green. Green kind of ties in with money, right? So the folder is green. My calendar appointments are green. Anything with the studio is orange. We kind of have orange in our colors for the studio, so that's just what I picked. And then our shows that we do, our traveling show team, in our calendar, it's all orange. So when I look at it, I don't have to think about it at all. I've even color-coded my wife's stuff. My wife gets purple. Her folders are purple, so I don't have to pay attention to them. Her appointments in the calendar are all purple, and I can see her calendar the same as she can see mine. All her stuff's purple. And so if this is a way that I've been able to think less, and I don't have to think about, well, what is that? What if every single one of my appointments on my calendar were all the same color? It would not make sense in my head, and I would take brain power to figure out, is that for my kids? Is that for my family? Is that for my wife? Is that for this company? Is it for this other company? Is it for what? So that's a small little preview, and it's going to be probably 8 to 10 videos. And at the very end of that program, I'm going to be offering productivity coaching for a year with whoever wants it. So I'm excited for that, but it's the same type of thing that the more you can build your life in a way that you have to think less is very important to me and should be important to everyone. And it sounds counterintuitive.
Right.
It sounds lazy, right? But it's not. I'm just making the tedious parts of my life as easy as they can possibly be so I can really work on the meat and potatoes of my day and being able to accomplish at least one big thing every day.
Well, putting it in place sounds like a lot of work to me, though.
Yeah.
Just because it would take time. But
Yeah.
I also really like it because I know I've spent time sitting on my computer being like, now, where did I put that file?
Yep.
Where is that?
Mm-hmm.
What did I name it again?
Yeah. Even if you saw my email inbox, all the same folders on my desktop match the folders that I have as I organize my email. And I have 0 email. Actually, I've got about 50 in my inbox right now. But usually I've got between 0 and 10 emails in my inbox at any given time. And those get color coordinated. And they either get deleted if I don't need them anymore, or almost everything, 90% of everything that comes in gets filed in a correct folder. It's either a client folder, it's either work, it's either personal, it's either studio, and then a breakdown from there. So that's a whole nother can of worms, but everything has to match. Everything. Everything.
What advice would you give to somebody who isn't naturally as organized as you? Do you think organization is the only way?
Yeah, and I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm pretty anal when it comes to organization and productivity. I would say it's a habit like anything. Like,
so train yourself.
Train yourself. Like
yeah.
when you go to the gym for the very first time, it hurts. And it hurts even worse the next day when you wake up and you're sore everywhere and you don't want to do it. But the more you train your muscles, the more your muscles can handle. It's the same thing with productivity and organization habits. It kind of sucks at first. You're like, this is just extra work for no good reason. But it's not. And if you can ingrain those types of habits into your life, it really makes your life easier. And then you're able to handle more and more and more and more because you take everything in your life through the same process and the same organizational structure. And not everyone's way that they organize makes sense for another person.
Right.
So I can only give what I figured out for myself, which works very well. I could teach somebody how to do that, but they might have a tweak for that or some variation of that.
Right.
But I would say it is very important. Most of the time, people that meet me, they are blown away when they hear how many things that I coordinate at any given time, any given day, any given week. But it's because I don't have to think about it. I have 4 different email accounts, and the majority of the email that comes in is not spam, it's not junk mail like most people get. It's stuff that really needs to be paid attention to, and it gets routed. And being able to run a marketing company and run a dance studio and run a performing team and run a family. I mean, you can even run a family like you run a business. The way your house is set up, the systems inside your house,
right.
The way that you work with your business partner, your spouse,
right.
And being on the same page, like all that kind of stuff. So there's all these different areas of life that if you have organization, it will make it a lot easier. And that's what I realized in the military. The military is one big system. It's one of the most perfect systems in the world. And it works very efficiently because of how structured it is. And sometimes that kind of structure doesn't work for most people.
Right. Or at least it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. But then when I realized that I could make my own system, it gets fun. It becomes like a game. Like, how do I want my system to best work for me?
Coming back full circle and tying it into who you want to be.
Yep.
Which you talked about earlier on.
Yep. Yeah.
What was your proudest military accomplishment?
My proudest military accomplishment? I don't know. Oh, challenge coins?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a challenge coin from a 4-star general one time.
Whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't a huge accomplishment, and the reason that I got it, I was going way above and beyond, and I was cooking actually for these generals on a regular basis, and it couldn't be during my normal working hours. It had to be during time that normally would have been my free time. And I was a junior rank, and I think they were all just really surprised at how serious I was taking that part of my career, and that I would go above and beyond and take time out of the not so free time that I had to be able to do something for them as selfless as cooking and building exquisite meals. For the majority of my military career, it was all logistics that I was handling, but along with that, it was cooking, and that was what I said, I think, earlier on in the beginning, that I wanted something that I was familiar with. Cooking had always been part of my background, and I asked my crew to give me cooking or give me photography. Give me 2 things that I know everything about, so I don't have to wonder in that area of my military career. And so that was probably the funnest time of my career, is when I was able to break outside of the normal cooking that was required of us and do whatever we wanted and have these creative, fun meals for the generals. So that was pretty big. I think most people might look at that and be like, yeah, that's not that bad, not that big. But that was definitely something that stood out for me. And then becoming a sergeant earlier on than anybody else around me, it was a lot of work. But when I became a sergeant, it seemed like my whole world changed, and that was pretty awesome. So maybe those two things, and then it's not necessarily a military accomplishment, but being able to accomplish a higher income outside of the military while I was in the military. That's just a huge accomplishment in general.
Absolutely.
And even more than doing that for myself, I helped 2 others do exactly the same thing. And so they were able to transition out of the military and have a little more cushion than most people would, and they had no worries getting out. And so that's always been something I focus on more, is being able to help others replicate the same thing that I've been able to do and mentor them in the direction that they're wanting to go. And I learned a lot about mentorship through the military, and that's always been very important to me.
Is there anything we missed that you would like to mention?
Now that I think about it, yes, when I was talking about daily routine, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that in order to master yourself or master what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, is the daily incremental improvements in your routine. So mastery comes from routine. And if you can dissect what that routine looks like every day and improve it little by little every day, that's the only way to really get to mastery. I think before we started, I was telling you about a documentary on Netflix that I fell in love with, but it's called Hiro Dreams of Sushi, and his name is spelled Jiro. And I love sushi. I think that's why I watched the documentary. But what caught me by surprise when I watched it is how specific he is with his daily routine, the way he wakes up, the way he gets ready, the way he gets on the bus, the time he gets on the bus, how he handpicks the fish that he uses, and every little bit, the time of the day that he starts making his rice, and how he does it and what he does to it. It's the exact same. It's identical every single day. And a lot of people might think that that would get boring or monotonous, but it's not. When you're really focused on mastery and perfecting your art or perfecting whatever it is that you're working toward, is the little tiny improvements that you can make every single day that will really get you to the next level.
So if you have something planned out that detailed, what happens when something comes up that requires your attention or gets in the way of that? The bus is late, the bus is off, getting maintenance, and it ruins the schedule. How do you deal with that?
There's discipline in everything, and there could even be distractions that pop up. What about that sushi maker's day when he's working on making this perfect sushi, and all the prep that goes into even being able to start making sushi? What if he gets interrupted? What if a call comes in? The average person would take the call and it would completely derail them from what they're focusing on. So being able to have focus and just relentless pursuit of what you're going for will always get the job done. There's always more than one way to get something done, and if something does happen that could throw your whole day off, there's always a way to get back on track. Or maybe that day is just a fluke, and then you have to wake up the next day and focus on, okay, this is how it's going to be.
What's your favorite way of dealing with those fluke situations that get you off of your game?
I was just refocusing and recentering. Like sometimes my whole day will be scheduled back to back so much that I don't even have 5-10 minutes in between my appointments. And so then what if somebody is 15-20 minutes late to their appointment, and then the next appointment I'm 15-20 minutes late, and it just snowballs. The best thing that I could do is take one of them out of the middle of my day and just call and be like, hey, look, I'm kind of off track. Can we reschedule for tomorrow? I want to make sure you get undivided attention and that I'm able to take care of you fully. Can we reschedule for a better time? Then I'm able to get back on track with my day. And that's just one of probably thousands of different things that could happen in a day. Or if your car breaks down, what are you going to do? What if you have a job? What if you're going to work and your car breaks down? Or you're just going to throw your hands up and be like, hey, I guess I'm not going today. The employer's probably not going to like that very much. So there's always ways to get it done. Call a friend, take the bus, grab an Uber, whatever it takes to be able to accomplish what you said you were going to accomplish ends up being extremely important.
If there's any listeners that are interested in more of what you do or connecting with you, how would they do that?
You could definitely shoot me an email, joseph@ideation.com. And ideation is spelled with an 8 in there. It's IDEA8ION.com. And that'll definitely come through to me. I would love to help anybody with anything, even if it's just as a sounding board. I've had those people in my life that really helped me just by being able to listen to what it was that I wanted to do or the direction that I wanted to go and then give some feedback or maybe some suggestions. Or there's social media. It's really easy to find me. If you Google Joseph Cancilla, you'll find all kinds of social media, our websites, my marketing website, the dance studio website, different videos of what we've done. If you see Joseph or the word fire CEO that somebody gave me as a nickname, I'm probably spitting fire. And that's a Samoan style fire knife that I spin, and that's more of a cultural thing. Our dance studio is Polynesian, so I've wanted that to be a really big part of my life and my kids' life so they can stay close to their culture and grow up knowing who they are. And the dance studio is more of a passion project, and my wife and my sister do quite a bit with that, so I can focus on marketing and what I do best and the consulting work that I do with different companies that I go into to be able to most of the time flip upside down their processes and the way they're doing things to be able to streamline and make what they do more efficient and better. Or maybe it's branding and graphic design, website design. We do a lot of that stuff. So anything along those lines, it is kind of spread out what I do. Jack of all trades, I guess. But yeah, any ideas that somebody has or any type of feedback or any way that I can help at all, I'm always willing. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to have you on the show, and I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered a new mindset to help you excel. I loved when Joseph said, if you can build your day in a way you don't have to think about it, then you can really focus on the things that are most important to think about. Please join me and share your favorite concepts from this episode on the Tap and Move Forward website or social media sites. If you want links to Joseph's social media or to read more about him, please visit www.tamfpodcast.com/organize.